Okay, so in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, the writer is known to be Solomon. It is understood that this was written during the last years of Solomon, and his attitude towards life is like, uh, I've seen everything, I've been there, I've done that, and with all the things that I've seen in life, my conclusion is that everything is meaningless. Life is meaningless, folks. So that's the kind of tone, that's the kind of uh, writing that you're finding in the Ecclesiastes. Think about that. It's like everybody takes life so seriously. He says, all that stuff, it's really all meaningless. So, did you ever come to think that the Bible would teach us that phrase that life is meaningless? Life is meaningless, man. In other translations, it says it's like chasing the wind. Anybody try to run after the wind and try to capture it? It's all meaningless. Is the point? Okay, so for those who just joined us, welcome everybody. We are in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and you tell me if you find some tough love in this. Okay, so it's a cynical view of life. Okay, so Ecclesiastes chapter 1, if you've never read the book of Ecclesiastes, this would be a good eye-opening experience for you. Okay, so Ecclesiastes chapter 1, here we go. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. So that's the reason why people think this must have been written by Solomon. Okay, Solomon. Now remember, Solomon was considered the wisest man in his time. Okay.
Right.
And here we are reading his words, which we believe, a lot of scholars believe, that this was during his last years, in his old age. What does he say in verse 2? Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What a attitude, right?
Mine says vanity of vanities.
Yeah, see, so it comes in different layers of translation. Vanity, what's vanity? The idea that everything you do is in vain.
Hmm.
It's empty. So if anybody has a different translation, you're welcome to share it. But think about the fact that there's this man who pretty much won everything. He won the whole world, right? Uh, he won the whole world with power, with wealth, and with the pleasures of life, fame. He had everything going for him. And he's speaking from someone who kind of doesn't really have a strong relationship with God at this point. And he's saying, with all those things that I've achieved, everything is vanity. It's meaningless. It's empty. And that's what life is all about. It's empty. What? The Bible teaches that? Well, you've got to sort it out as far as where he's coming from, right? But he's achieved everything he wanted. But all in all, everything is meaningless. Okay. What does a man gain? I'm in verse 3. What does a man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Isn't that what we all
Cutting out, Pastor Bert.
about life?
Yes, Pastor Bert, you're breaking.
You're breaking up real bad.
Really? Okay, thanks for letting me know. If I need to repeat, just let me know because right now Nothing is going on my end. Everything seems to be looking okay. But if
Okay,
you
so
guys,
please repeat.
yeah, if everything, if you're not
Just,
receiving my,
just the last sentence. You did the washing machine.
Yeah,
wow,
I'm hearing it too. I'm hearing it
okay,
too, Pastor Bert.
yeah, I don't know what to do to fix it. Should
Yeah.
I?
But you're okay now. It was just the last sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right, because I haven't touched anything at this point. So
Repeat, please.
sure. So when he says in verse 3, what does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Remember, that's part of the curse, that we are supposed to toil under the sun.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's basically saying we all have toiled under the sun, but what do you gain? that it's like, what do you really accomplish? You know, I mean, everybody has a different view of life. If you travel around the world, uh, the American way of life is different from the way of life maybe somewhere in the outskirts of Africa. You know, what's their way of life? They work, we work here, but our kind of work is different. Their kind of work is hunting and gathering, maybe, you know, just to get a meal. But with all that being said, as far as all our labors, what do you really accomplish? You know, generations come, you know, we're all trying to survive, we're all trying to live. So he says, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and then hurries back to where it rises. You see the attitude? It's like, you know, you might achieve a lot of things, but you can really feel empty. You can really feel that sense. Maybe God allowed Solomon to feel that sense of emptiness when he strayed away from the Lord, so that Solomon can eventually realize the only thing that really matters, which is what he says at the end, is just being in this relationship with God. That's, you know, obeying God and having that relationship with God is all that really matters. But I think here Solomon was able to experience going astray. Um, the sun rises, the sun sets, and hurries back to where it rises. It's like go back again. It's like a cycle. You know, some people even say, "Man, you're just spinning your wheels." You know, you're
Right.
just spinning your wheels, and that's all that life is. Um, he's experienced that. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. So he's looking at the whole world and how it behaves, and it's like, yeah, it just keeps spinning round, cycling up, down, north, south. Even the wind does that, the sun does that. All streams flow into the sea, right? Rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full.
Mm.
To the place the streams come from,
Cutting out,
there
Pastor.
they return again.
Yeah,
Oh, he's like a monopoly.
Pastor,
What,
breaking
what's
up
that?
again. You're
You're
breaking
breaking
up a
up
little bit.
again.
Okay.
Maybe you should move location. Sometimes that may do it.
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay.
Let me try to see if I can change my my source of internet. Let's see here. Let me try some. I'm gonna try my phone as my source. Okay, I changed it so that I can go to my phone. Okay, so are you starting to get a very cynical view of life here on Earth?
Mm,
Now you guys are breaking up. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the idea of the sun just keeps cycling over and over. The wind, keeps blowing south and north and back around again. Water, the streams of water flowing back into the sea, and the sea's never full. Uh, to the place the streams come from, there they return again. The cycle of water going up into the clouds, bringing us rain, the rain going into the rivers going into the sea never gets full. It's like so cynical. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. There you go. All of you who are into, YouTube or the things on your phone, you can never watch enough, it seems, right? Or those who are into music, you can never hear enough good music. It's always more and more. What has been, verse 9, will be again. That's where you get that term. There's nothing new under the sun. It's already been there. It just comes in a different form, but it's repeating. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
And so, you might get shocked, or you might get shaken up by all the things that are going on around the world or people. There's nothing new under the sun.
No.
Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new?
No.
It was
Yes.
here. It was here already long ago. It was here before our time.
Yes, there is. There's a few new things under the sun in my lifetime.
Well, yeah, I mean, but we're trying to understand where Solomon is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, his point,
From that time to this, everything is making a full circle.
yeah, I mean, the point of what he's making is, life is meaningless, and there's nothing new under the sun, and whatever you've seen before, it's happened before. Is there anything of which one can say, look, there is something new? No, it was here already long ago. It was here before our time.
Right.
There is no remembrance of men of old. Even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. That means when you guys die, nobody's going to remember you. Just the way it is. This is a cynical view. This is somebody who says, been there, done that. And that's what he's communicating in this first section that I just read. Now, you guys obviously are welcome to argue with this philosopher, because that's what it says. This is, written from a philosophical perspective. And obviously it's open to a lot of arguing, which then, sharpens you if you're allowed to argue. But that's what he says. And then he continues in verse 12. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. See, so now he's giving his testimony. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Man, if this doesn't depress you, what do you think? Is this kind of depressing, the way Solomon is talking here? Because it sure seems depressing,
Like he's depressed.
Yeah, he doesn't look at life with with a rose-colored glasses, like everything is nice and rosy. No, he looks at it with a kind of jaded look. He's been jaded. He lost the twinkle in his eye. And that's what he's talking about. And he's a man of God. He's a man that has walked with God, but he's also giving us, hey, there is a side when you have this very cynical perspective of life, and God allows you to have that. Hopefully it's just temporary. You know, you don't stay that way, but it happens. It can happen. You're not always going to be, happy, happy, joy, joy. Although the command does say, be joyful always. But in this case, yeah, he's just dealing with it. He's dealing with all the things that he's experienced, and he's sharing it with us. The man who had everything, right? I devoted myself to study, he says. And then he says, I've seen all the things that are done under the sun. And he concludes that, man, all that is meaningless, chasing after the wind. Verse 15, what is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. Man, that's pretty deep, right? What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. What is,
It says numbered.
philosophical argument, but what do you think of that?
Mine says numbered. What
Cannot
is
be,
crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered.
yeah, mine says counted.
Yeah, same thing.
Right? So
Yeah.
so what is he trying to say? He's trying to say it is what it is. If a person, I'm looking at a person, it could be something, it doesn't have to be a person, but if you're twisted, they're never going to get straightened out. And if they're lacking, they're never going to be able to add anything to their lives. So it's as if to say, so give up already. I don't know, I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. Think of that. It's as if he's saying, I've tried to explore these areas, to experience it. So he's experienced wisdom. He's experienced madness. He also went crazy.
Yep.
You ever go through life and you feel like, man, I'm going crazy.
Yep.
I must be going crazy.
I'm losing my mind.
He says, or for those who were into drugs and all those things, I'm going crazy with all these intoxicating, chemicals in my system. And then he says, and folly, foolishness. I tried doing foolish things. Experience and understand it, what it's like. He did it all.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that this too is chasing after the wind. It results in emptiness. It results in, if you've ever tried to chase the wind, what are you doing? That's crazy, trying to chase the wind. You can never catch the wind.
Like people work themselves to death.
Irene.
Working
Yeah.
themselves to death,
They
only to
work.
come up empty.
They work themselves. They work themselves to death.
Right, and
Only
only to
to
come up
only
empty or come up
exactly.
dead.
Yeah, dead, and you're gonna leave it all to somebody else.
Right. They say that when a person dies, the last thing on their mind is saying, man, I could have worked more. I could have worked harder. Usually what happens is when they're dying, their regret is I should have spent more time with my loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
But just goes to show you, sometimes we just go through life following these things, and
I'm looking at all the
all those
billionaires.
years you spent in pursuing those things, you're empty. It's like chasing after the wind. What's that, Daphne?
I'm looking at all of these billionaires, and they're those children don't have to be hungry. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. They got everything
That's what
they
I
want. They're
don't
not
get.
struggling.
That's what I don't get. You have all this money. You'll never even spend it in your lifetime. How about you help somebody? Those kids at St. Jude Hospital,
Well, I'm not going to go there because
I'm
I
just
don't know
saying,
what kind
Pastor.
of giving they do, because their giving could be in secret.
Maybe so.
See,
And
so
they shouldn't be asking me for
I'm not
$19 a
going to
month.
try to judge what they do with their money. But that's not the focus. The focus of what we're
Right?
looking is the person Solomon, who had all that money and who had all that fame, who had all that power, had all that pleasure, and yet he was still empty. And he's saying, I've tried wisdom, I've tried madness, I tried foolishness, I tried it all, right? Tried to understand it by experiencing it, but I learned that this too is chasing after the wind. Verse 18 continues to say, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
Think about that. You guys, with all the knowledge you acquire in the scriptures and with all the wisdom you get, sometimes you get so much, you develop a sadness, a sorrow. Sometimes with all that knowledge you have of the scriptures, you end up with grief. Why is that? I've experienced, the more I learn about the scriptures and the more I study, the more people can come up to me and say, well, the things that you're believing is actually wrong. The things that you're following are actually wrong. And so it's depressing if you thought you were right and then you're made to feel like, no, you're actually wrong. And so that's what happens with wisdom and knowledge when you're trying to pursue it. You never fully arrive. And that's why, when you talk about these philosophical ideas, aren't you glad that wisdom is not what's going to save you? Wisdom is not going to get you to heaven. Aren't you glad God designed it that way?
Right.
Wisdom is not going to get you to heaven. How are you going to get to heaven?
By faith.
In
Jesus
In
Christ.
Jesus.
isn't that what the gospel teaches?
Yes.
So you're not having to depend on acquiring all this wisdom and developing all this, growing in your knowledge, because it can develop sorrow and grief in the process. It's in the process of acquiring all this wisdom. Yeah, it can be sorrowful and it can cause you grief, but that's not what saves you. It does help you. Better to be wise than to be foolish in this world, but it doesn't save you. What saves you is trusting in the Lord Jesus Christ, the person who gave his life for you, and
Yeah.
calling you to put your trust in him, give your life over to him, a person, and by doing that, you're saved. See? So, uh, something to be thankful for, that I'm so glad all the wisdom that I can get is not going to save me. That's why Jesus even told these Pharisees, he said to them in John chapter 5, you search the scriptures because you think in them you're going to find eternal life. And then Jesus said, they're talking about me, but you don't want to come to me. See? Well, we know better, right? They're talking about the scripture verses that we read and learn. It's talking about Jesus, and we do right by putting our faith in Jesus. And that's the way we operate and function as we continue to learn the scriptures. Now, in chapter 2, pretty much, continuing with that theme of everything being meaningless, he says in chapter 2, verse 1 of Ecclesiastes, for those who just joined us. Ecclesiastes, by the way, is the book right after the book of Proverbs. So, Solomon says, I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. to find out what is good. If you've ever come to a place where you have pursued pleasure, really just try to see how much pleasure you can experience in life, okay? That's what he was doing. But that also proved to be meaningless. See, so no matter how much pleasure you pursue, after you experience all the pleasures that you wanted, you're still going to be empty. You're still going to, you're going to be like Solomon, who says, man, this is just all meaningless. This is all meaningless. Trying to pursue all this pleasure and actually getting all this pleasure, still empty. I'm still coming to the realization this is meaningless. It has no meaning. Because those pleasures, they come and they go. And when they go, what are you going to do? Pursue more? And then that disappears? It just never ends. So meaningless. Okay. Then verse 2 says laughter. So now he's pursuing laughter. As if, I'm going to just find humor. I'm going to listen to a lot of comedians. Really get caught up in all these comedians so that can make me laugh. I'm just going to try to find laughter in life. Laughter, I said, is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself. How do people cheer themselves? He said, I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. Just doing a lot of foolish things, which means nobody can tell me what to do. I do whatever I feel like doing for the fun of it. My mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. So when you think about your life, the few days, what are you going to do in these few short days of your life? So he became like a builder now. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. So, he's pursuing all these projects. He's acquiring more and more workers. I also own more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. He thought all these things are going to make me happy.
No.
I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem. Now his fame spread before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me because he had enough wisdom to do all these things, to build and to acquire all these things. But he had everything but that peace with God. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. Could you imagine just whatever you want, you could just get it just like that. That's how life was to him. It was that easy. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work. And this was the reward for all my labor, all his hard work. Yet, when I surveyed all this, verse 11, yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, what did he conclude? Everything is meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. So that was his experience. That's what Andrew like. And you guys have come to that peace with God, but there are still others around you who think that's what life is all about: pursuing pleasure, pursuing fame, power. You know, they all define life in those terms. You know, that's why Jesus said, what does it gain? What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but he loses his own soul? And there are people that there are people out there who live for these type of things, and they think they're going to keep pursuing that for the rest of their life until the day they die. And they're going to conclude that all this was empty. It was all meaningless. You know, you hear that a lot from Christians' testimonies who had everything. You know, they were empty. And the only time they found peace was when they made peace with God. And then nothing matters anymore. All those things now take a back seat to their relationship with God. All right. Now, does anybody have any verses that you guys want to talk about concerning what we just read? Did anything hit you? You know? Anybody have any thoughts about life being empty? Was this
Verse, I'm sorry.
18.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Was it Baby Catherine or Diane?
Go ahead, Sister Diane. Or Daphne. Sister Daphne.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it was Daphne. Yeah.
Verse
Thank you,
18.
guys.
Verse 18 of chapter 2 or chapter
1.
1?
1.
Okay. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. That one?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're talking about wisdom, right? You acquire wisdom.
Okay.
The more you read the Bible, the more you study
Right.
the Bible, the more you come to Bible class, you're getting wisdom. But as you get more and more wisdom, what happens is you come across times of sorrow because
How is that?
the wisdom you have is not enough. And so you never quite are satisfied with the wisdom that you have. You think you're smart, then you realize you're not as smart as you think. And that creates a sorrow.
No, I already know I'm not as smart as I think. I've always known that. I've always known that.
Then you're in a good place. You're in a place of having that willingness to learn. But some people, they get so caught up in everything they know that rather than, like when I watch debates, there was this one man who was a professional debater. And the more he was debating for Islam, by the way. He would always show all the problems that there are found in believing in Christianity. He would create so much doubt concerning Jesus, concerning the Bible, and he was really good at it. And then he had an experience with God. And he had to come to a place where he realized, he really wasn't trying to learn the truth. All he wanted to do was be the professional debater who could prove with conviction that what the Christians were believing in was wrong. But when Jesus appeared to him in a vision, he was shaken up, and he had to come to the realization of the truth that what he was doing was not trying to find the truth. What he was doing was trying to prove that he was right.
Oh.
See, and that's what sometimes happens to people when all they care about is gaining more and more wisdom and knowledge. They just want to show that they're right. They don't really care about learning. They don't want to take that position that I'm not that smart. No, they want to take that position or the posture is like, I know a lot, and you can't tell me anything new because I know a lot more than you. That kind of attitude.
I
So
think what's
wisdom,
throwing me is
wisdom
with
does can
wisdom comes sorrow. I think that the sorrow is what's I think that's what's throwing me.
yeah,
You know what I'm
it can
saying?
cause sadness. It could, having too much wisdom can cause you sadness because sometimes your wisdom makes you feel too proud. Okay. And so when you're proven wrong, that causes sadness. Or wisdom can make you feel sad because, or, make you feel sad because you feel like you're not smart enough. You need more wisdom. And learning more and more and more, it makes you feel like, man, this thing is never going to stop. When am I ever going to be able to rest? Because I'm always acquiring more and more wisdom and knowledge. And that's how come I said to you guys earlier, I said, that's why aren't you glad that you're not saved by wisdom? You're not saved by all this knowledge, you know?
Remember when I first started the class, I told you, I said, Pastor Bert, I thought all these years, I thought I knew the Bible. I don't know Jack. Since I've been coming to this class,
Yeah.
I ain't know nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, little bits and
So,
pieces, but see, now I'm getting food.
yeah. But
You see what
back
I'm
then,
saying?
you might have experienced sorrow back then when you realized, you thought you knew something and then you realized you didn't know Jack.
I don't. I know
I
nothing.
could have brought you sadness. So that's his point. He's saying, a lot of wisdom can cause sorrow, a lot of knowledge can cause you grief, because there's something about when you're trying to learn more and more and more, you also realize the more you learn, the more questions that are raised, and the more
Mm-hmm.
questions that are raised, the more you realize I really don't know much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's, at least, hey,
Nail on the nail,
it's good
head on the
to have
nail.
it, but don't depend on it. Just like everything else, don't lean on your own understanding. Instead, trust in the Lord with all your heart. You know, so that's pretty much the philosophical. Uh, I look at it very cynical uh, attitude views, but I think Solomon had that temporarily. And so with Solomon sharing this experience with us, it makes us feel like, hey, maybe I have these feelings sometimes concerning my Christian journey, but I'm not the only one who felt this way. And so, you can see that Solomon had that. Let's read the last verse or the last part of this book just to see how it ends. In chapter 12, verse 13, right?
Ch-
Which
chapter
now
12 or chapter 12 or chapter 2?
no, chapter 12. We're going to the end of the book now. So we can see, with everything that's being
Oh,
said, how is he going to finish this? I'm
okay.
skipping. I'm skipping all the way
Oh,
to.
okay. I get it.
And so this is what he says. Not only, verse 9, not only was the teacher wise, but also he imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Verse 13, here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God. Here we are again. Fear of God, right? Reverence for the Lord, and keep his commandments. And you know what his commandments are. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. For this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So just knowing that, keep your life simple. In fact, in parts of the book, I'm not going to get into it right now, but it says just be thankful for the food that you're eating,
Mm-hmm.
the drink that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and that you have work. Be thankful for those things because that's what God gave us while we're living here on earth. That's really the bottom line. Just being grateful to the things that God has given us. And while we're living here on earth, again, loving God, loving your neighbor, and that continues to be the direction we go with God. All right? So,
Okay.
shall we close in prayer?
Oh,
And
Pastor Bert, you need to turn up the
Diane, you had a
recording
thought?
too. Well,